Before we get started, do you gentlemen mind if I read something out here? Perhaps you, one or both of you, will be able to tell me who said it or where it came from, too.
Sure.
Quote, "The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government of China. Taiwan is a province of China which has long been returned to the motherland. The liberation of Taiwan is China's internal affair in which no other country has the right to interfere, and all US forces and military personnel must be withdrawn from Taiwan." Do either of you know where that came from?
我来，老师，我来。Was it Nixon, sir?
You're absolutely right. It was Richard Nixon who signed off on the declaration. It was an agreement about the first one China policy, which came out of their meeting in Shanghai. That was Richard Nixon's words.
Well, very interesting indeed. But most importantly, very well put, Mr. Nixon.
Yes. Yeah, he sounds like he was working on behalf of the dreaded CCP when he said it.
Don't make waves.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to try to establish whether or not it's China or the USA that has changed its stance on the one China policy. So, Jerry, if I can first of all come to you, what do you think? Does Taiwan want independence?
The simple answer to that, Ian, is that it's complicated. Most people in Taiwan do not want independence. Of course, anyone can create a survey that makes it look like they do or like they don't. But the Taiwanese people that I've all met, I mean, every single one of them is very much more about the status quo. They know that the loss of China as their major trading partner would absolutely devastate their economy. So no. And this manifested itself in the last election. Lai won the election with just over a quarter, like 27%, and his party lost power in parliament. So under no circumstances could that be described as a win for the people who seek independence, which Lai effectively does.
Well, if that's the case, then why do we keep on hearing stories that sort of suggest that many or most people in Taiwan do want independence? Fernando.
Well, basically it's because the US keeps telling them that they have agency as a country without actually saying it. That's the thing. The latest manifestation of this is what they call the Taiwan-US Working Level Meeting on International Organization Issues, which was recently held in Taipei late last month. The discussions were between the American Institute of Taiwan and the Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office in the United States with the U.S. State Department. And they focused on expanding Taiwan's participation in the United Nations system and other international fora, such as the World Health Organization and the International Civil Aviation Organization. The State Department insists, they say that they support for Taiwan's participation in international fora is in line with their one China policy. This is not about international organization issues. This is about them giving more power to a province of China. It's like China attempting to get Hawaii into the WHO or NATO or the UN.
Bonkers. Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I mean, I've read that State Department policy brief as well. And I particularly like the way, as you just alluded to then, that they say in the last sentence of the policy brief, our support for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international fora is in line with our one China policy. I mean, what sort of wording's that? I mean, it's not their one China policy in the first place. It's China's.
Can I ask, are there two one China policies?
Well, exactly, or three or four or five. You know,
more.
Absolutely. I mean, it just strikes me that, I mean, if the USA can sort of appropriate other countries' policies at will and adapt them to their needs, then no policy is worth the paper it's written on, surely. I mean, it seems to be reserving the right to interpret China's one China policy in any way that it wishes, almost like some sort of, naughty, defiant little child testing his parents' red lines. What do you think, Jerry?
Yeah, I think we can liken the USA to that truculent child holding a finger an inch away from the sibling. Moments after the parent has warned them, don't touch each other. I'm not doing anything wrong, says the kid. I'm not touching. Or the belligerent schoolyard bully who gets his friends behind him and then approaches the smaller group in the school to demand allegiance. Give us all your dinner money and stuff. Then claims it's their right because everyone else in the schoolyard supports them. Or that recalcitrant liar who said, Dad said it was okay, but Dad's not there to agree or disagree. Any parent knows this happens everywhere as part of growing up, part of experiencing all kinds of different behaviors and some disciplinary problems. It does happen. But no one expected that when they grew up, the most powerful nation in the world would continue doing the same thing, which is exactly what the US is doing. It's been doing it in Eastern Europe after promising not 1 inch further east and that there would be no NATO expansion. Then NATO, of course, expanded. And by the way, it's also holding a meeting in just a week's time to talk about expanding NATO into the Pacific region, so it becomes nothing to do with the Atlantic anymore. That will be on the 7th to the 9th of July in Washington. The US are gathering, or at least attempting to gather supporters to bully and go to China. It's doing it in Tibet with more visits by leaders promising support for an independent, or ex-leaders, for an independence movement that the spiritual leader of the people they want to support has clearly says he doesn't want. Getting back to Taiwan, did you guys know that the US actually held a democracy summit there in 2022? Every year, Washington holds a democracy summit, and they invite Tibetans who've never set foot in Tibet to make speeches, to criticize China. They've even invited a few people from Hong Kong, and this has been going on since 2021. They've actually invited now the province of Taiwan to attend each one. Taiwan isn't a country, the entire world recognizes that, but in 2022, they were invited to be the hosts of this so-called democracy summit, going against the spirit of their statements that we said before and their agreements. I'm not sure what that is, if that's not a breach of their agreements.
Well, absolutely. I mean, is this kind of attitude, does it, continue to this day? I mean, is it still going on, this sort of contravention or, basically changing the spirit of the agreements and statements that have been made previously? Fernando?
Of course, they continue to do it in Taiwan. Both Blinken and Biden have reiterated their stance on the One China policy, and they say that it has not changed. They assured the world that they have been consistent for decades and they do not seek independence for Taiwan. But the evidence that we see shows that that is a lie. Their policy has changed. Nixon said it first in February of 1972 in the Shanghai Communique. Both sides agreed to a normalization of relations, a reduction of military conflict, that neither should seek hegemony, and that neither will enter agreements or understandings with the other, directed at other states. Now, lawyers, they may argue what subsequent documents say or don't say or how they are interpreted, but it's very hard to deny when Nixon signed a document, which, if I can just repeat what Jerry just said, went like this. The government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government of China. Taiwan is a province of China. How can we misunderstand this? It has long been returned to the motherland. The liberation of Taiwan is China's internal affair, and this is what they say from the pulpits every single time. This is an internal affair, and no other country has the right to interfere. This is what they keep doing. And the best part, and the part where I have a lot of questions, all U.S. forces and military personnel must be withdrawn from Taiwan. So my question to our audience is, why are there U.S. troops in Taiwan today? Why are they selling weapons to Taiwan? But here's a question probably for another video, guys. Why does China allow it?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, they're tough questions to answer, if I'm honest. But that statement that you made and Jerry made earlier is by no means, the only one in that vein. I mean, on the 15th of December 1978, Jimmy Carter made a speech announcing recognition of the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China, He went on to say that the two parties, the USA and China, reaffirm the principles agreed on by the two sides in the Shanghai Communique of 1972. Wide interpretations have been made on the wording of the government of the United States acknowledges the Chinese position that there is but one China and Taiwan is part of China. However, in the same speech, he then went on to say that recognizing the People's Republic of China, that it is the single government of China. And he recognized that as a fact. Then there was another one in August of 1982. Ronald Reagan did the same thing in a joint communique, promising, wait for it, to reduce arms sales to Taiwan once again. The opening preamble contained the following words: the United States of America recognized the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China, and it acknowledged, so it's already done so, and he's reiterating that, the Chinese position that there is but one China and Taiwan is part of China. So from these statements, the US position, seems to be crystal clear, doesn't it, Jerry?
Yes, I think so. So when Blinken or Biden say our decades-old policy hasn't changed, it's not a mistake or an interpretation issue. The policy has changed. There's salami slicing. This is the term that's been used to describe what the USA has been doing to China in relation to Taiwan. They've approached each red line in the same way that that truculent kid approaches their sibling, close enough to say, we're not doing anything wrong, but clearly doing something that will annoy the other. The meeting last week in Taipei wasn't the first of such meetings. There was another one in October 2022. As well as that one, it consisted of consultations in Washington on expanding Taiwan's participation at the United Nations and in other international fora. Again, so the two sides discussed assisting Taiwan to meaningfully participate in the United Systems and other international organizations. So this most recent visit was even more of an insult, not to China, or was to China, but to the three former presidents of their own country, because contrary to their own agreement of non-interference in the internal affairs of China, two deputy secretaries of state visited Taiwan just last week, and according to the US State Department, Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the two countries held working level, this is their words, not mine, working level meetings in Taipei on the 21st to exchange views on Taiwan's substantive participation in international organizations. And the US State Department say this focused on expanding Taiwan's meaningful participation. Again, UN systems, other international fora. This is never ending. It's just one salami slice after the next.
The question is, what do you do when there's no more salami?
You've eaten all your lunch.
Listen, guys, this country, the US, which has already 3 times formally and publicly agreed that there is but one China and that Taiwan is part of it, and they would now like the province of Taiwan to have a larger say in matters of international affairs. They would like the province of Taiwan to have the military capacity to defend itself from its own recognized government, which they agreed is in Beijing. And yet they continuously assert that their policies on China have not changed. Do they think we're idiots? Now, there's more. In an act of global, some might say childish disobedience, the US has now written a law in their own country called the Taiwan Relations Act to subvert agreements made by the United Nations through Resolution 2758 and the agreements of 3 of their own presidents from 72, 79, and 82. That's where we are.
If I can just add one more thing to finish off this, the father of the KMT, the founding father of what they call the Republic of China, is actually from the hometown where I have made my adopted home, Zhongshan. He comes from here. So a lot of people don't know this. If you look at any official Taiwanese building and you see a picture of a man standing there, he's Chinese. He's from China. He's from Zhongshan, where I live. And I was literally just a few kilometers from his home just last night. This indicates that Chinese people who who value their ancestry, their ancestral homes, and where their parents and families are buried will value what is happening here. They do not want independence from that. They do not want to say, my parents are from another country. Even the diaspora who come back to China all the time to see their grandparents' home, their great grandparents' home. This is happening all over the world. People are coming from all over the world into China. They don't really want independence from that. That would be cutting off their ancestral homes.
Absolutely right. I mean, I remember some years ago, one of the former leaders of Taiwan made trips, at least one, certainly, back to the mainland
Yeah,
of China.
Mr. Mao.
That's right. And yeah, I mean, it was a big thing, and at the same time, it was nothing out of the ordinary. Mm.
Yeah, for me, the most ridiculous thing is when they talk about, oh, there are ships sailing up and down Taiwan waters. It's China. It's China's waters. Oh, there are planes flying over the Taiwan airspace. It's China. It's their airspace. I mean, after Nancy Pelosi decided to go to Taiwan, forget about that median. There's no median anymore. That's
No.
it. They are asserting themselves. This is ours. This is China. We'll fly wherever we want. We will sail wherever we want because Taiwan belongs to China. Now deal with it.
Good on them. So, the US, just to sum up, right? So, the US has agreed several times that Taiwan is part of China and that the reunification of Taiwan with the mainland is an internal matter for China alone. Yet the US still attempts to interpret the wording of those agreements to legitimize its acting in contradiction to the spirit in which they were entered. So back to children then, it seems that children can be disciplined. They usually grow out of their recalcitrant periods and become functional adults one day. But it seems that there is one country in the world that is having considerable trouble showing any degree of maturity. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on the 3 M's.
Bye.
Bye.